Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Let me turn the other thing on.
Okay. I know who is it.
All righty, and welcome to the latest episode of the Dislabel Guy podcast. I'm your host, the Dislabel Guy. With me this week, I have Prime Minister Green joining me to talk about this topic that I had that kind of caught my attention. So I want to talk about, hey, can we have a seat at the table, or can I pull my own chair up to the table? And I say that because I was looking at something. Actually, a friend of mine shared something. It was a seminar, a webinar that they were doing, a recording. I want to say it was on Instagram, or they might have just been advertising on Instagram. And I seen it, and it talked about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I seen the three guests that were, it was three or four guests that were supposed to be speaking, and it kind of caught my attention. Now, me, I was just curious. I seen the three people, and we all know that there's some unnoticeable disabilities. But I made a comment. I was like, hey, y'all talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity. Is there anyone with a disability, a noticeable disability representing? And she said, hey, she tagged me to the person that was doing the thing and said, hey, maybe next time you can join and be and represent that group. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I just think it's interesting that when we talk about diversity and inclusion and equity, it seems like people with disabilities always get left out. Now you might ask, hey, this is a Republican. Why is he talking about this? Shouldn't he be able to create his own? Well, my stance has always been, hey, I talk a lot of politics, but first and foremost, I always stand for people with disabilities, regardless, because I understand the struggle that they go to. So, and then if you look back, George Bush, I think Senior was the one who started the American Disability Act and start making things, accessible, or trying to get people on an equal level with disability as their non-disabled peers. So that's pretty much a setup. You got any input, Prime Minister Green?
Yeah, well, I was, just listening to you speak on the topic. I was thinking this is something that, we both had. Well, I was born with my disability. Yours was an injury early in childhood, and so we both kind of developed in our whole lives with having what you like you said, visible disabilities. Because now you have people who have mental health issues, and that's being represented a lot now, which has been something around, which has been around for a long time, but it's being represented real hard now. And not to take away from that, I'm like you, people with visible disabilities don't really have somebody with a visible disability speaking on their behalf. It's always been somebody just like consideration for us. It's something I noticed growing up. And I think, I've tried to have this conversation with other people because, just giving a little history on it from my knowledge around the civil rights movement, where it was more about black people having their civil rights. They didn't they didn't really hello?
Yes, you
They
still
didn't
there.
really they didn't really consider what what people with disabilities wanted. They just gave us what they thought we needed. And that's how we've always been treated. Like, we got the buildings being wheelchair accessible. That was something we needed. Schools being more wheelchair accessible. we grew up. We went to a school that was for people with disabilities, solely for kids with disabilities, and then we was able to transition into mainstream, what they called it back then, and so they was just giving us what they thought we needed, but they never asked us what we wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
And
mean, I think it's interesting. Like I said, this topic is very interesting to me, especially since I moved down south. So I've had a little struggle. I've had like 4 or 5 job offers since I moved down here, and one I had to go get fingerprinted so I could get into the school system. And when I went to the police station to get fingerprinted, there was no ramp in sight. So we're talking about
right,
we're talking about the evil playing field. I'm already stuck. Now I can walk up steps, so I did that to show them, or not really to show them, but for the next person that comes behind me. And that's pretty much the reason why I'm doing this podcast. I can speak for myself and you too, and that we aren't the normal person with disabilities. We get out here and do for ourselves. But everybody with a disability, especially a physical disability, can't get up and walk up the steps and go inside to get their fingerprints. So I try to do things and just make things easier, or let them see that, hey, he has a disability, and I'm going to make them change things because of what happened. Because I'm sure I'm probably one of the first people that ever came and applied for a job with the school system down here. So I think that's one thing that, like you said, I think they put people into positions, and when we talk about inclusion and equity, hey, we're the main ones that get left out. And I think it's funny that now, even with this whole identity crisis going on, that I think I spoke on that in a couple episodes ago, they're including that into inclusion, when that really doesn't have nothing to do with the whole purpose or what it got started for. When
right.
you talk about the civil rights, if you want
Mhm.
to be a man or woman, sure, that's fine. You could do that by yourself, but they're including that into the situation or what's going on right now more than they are for people with physical disabilities. And before we go on a little more, let me just show you what equity is. So equity is the process that begins by acknowledging that an unequal starting place and makes a commitment to correct the imbalance. And I think this is a good definition for, well, not a definition but example for inclusion and diversity. It says diversity is being asked to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. So if anybody wants to understand those are some examples and definitions of equity and inclusion and diversity.
Well, I mean, I'm totally understanding what your situation is. But as a fellow person with disabilities, I would have to tell you, you have to remember we're part of like the first generation of people like us who kind of spoke out for ourselves. You have to remember, like I said, we went to a school that was solely for kids with disabilities, and although we wasn't the first kids to transition in this city, Washington D.C., where I'm at now, we were kind of the reason why the door got open because so many of us were, uh, what's the word? We were doing well at our academic level that they had to include us in the regular school system. They couldn't just keep us in that closet because we were disabled. Some of our grades was off the charts. I think, I was thinking about that the other day, without saying the names of the people. You know who I'm talking about, but our circle, I don't know that many people outside of our circle who went to college. Me, you, Kelvin, I think is now in college. Olu went, you know. So intellectually, our group it was a lot of us who were intellectually good with our disabilities. So we pretty much been opening that door from the beginning. Now, if you want to put it on our shoulders to be the ones that keep opening the doors, you have to understand people who came before us didn't. The disabled people who came before us, they didn't even really know their talents, because they were told that they couldn't do things. I remember being told when I was younger that I wasn't going to be able to do things that I do every day now. So you have to get past that part first before you can even be asked to the party, like you just said, or asked to dance. You have to find out whether you even deserve to be there. You have to want to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like you asking this question right now, there's somebody else that's disabled that don't even know there's a party going on.
Well, that's the whole thing about inclusion. And when I think about that, like I said, and going back to the original statement that I made earlier about the whole Instagram post, those are HR professional, human resources professionals.
So I get what you're saying. You're pretty much saying that they should know.
Yes, I'm a little caught off guard that they didn't know that, especially HR professionals as well as owners of businesses. So
Right,
that's really what caught me off guard when I seen it. I was like, okay, I can understand somebody else that don't know this, but are you
right,
telling me HR professionals don't know it? And like I said, I look at it two ways. The young lady that actually was sharing the event, she actually I think she told me that I was one of the first people that she ever went out with or met or talked to that had a disability.
right,
And I met her like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not sure, or maybe longer.
right.
And I'm like, wow. And she's like a year older than me. So I'm like, so for 36 years, where have you been at? So it was kind of funny when I was like, dang, okay, so and that's not the first time my homeboy that I'm good friends with today. I met him in college and he's from PG County, Maryland. He was like, hey, you the first dude I met with a disability.
Right.
So is it the fact that are we to blame, or is it the blame for everybody being that people don't see us out there or whatever?
Well, I mean, I think it's both. It's both. I think it's both because some of us we grow up in these households where, like I said earlier, we get told that we're not going to be able to do things. I think we had a conversation before about me and how my house was and how my brothers were and my mother and my sister, how they pushed me to go outside. You know what I'm saying? So be part of the regular society. And some of us, we've seen some people with disabilities who I think you told me before when you went to college with other people who were disabled. They didn't come out the dorm.
Oh
So
yeah,
although
yeah,
they had the intellectual impact to get to college, they didn't know how to socialize. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah.
what you have is people like you and I. We come out and we socialize so people get to see us and they're like, hey, Bernie's cool, Raymond's cool. Although Raymond's in a wheelchair, and Bernie, the disabled guy, he's cool, So we end up being the first person, which is actually a good thing if you look at it from the other side, because we get to set the standard now.
Yeah,
You get what I'm saying?
yeah.
So we set the standard, and once we set the standard, but I'm like you though, when you get a group full of HR people, how do you not know this when this is your realm?
Even me, I studied human resources in grad school, so they don't typically touch too much on that area as far as people with disabilities. They might do maybe a half a chapter on it, but
Right.
it's not really. a whole chapter that's dedicated or lessons that really could go deep into details as far as okay, these are the issues that come up with people with disabilities, or these are people that you might meet in the community with disabilities. So it's not really a deep depth detail that they go into when they talk about people with disabilities. So I think that's the first thing that I see is the problem. And the second thing, like you said, is community outings. I think we are still stuck in this Aristotle stage or mindset that said, hey, people that deaf, I think he said people that are deaf, and I'm just paraphrasing this, should be kept away in mental hospital, basically saying, hey, they have no reason to be out here.
Right.
They can't comprehend nothing, so why should they be out here? And
Right.
like I said, we definitely know that's not true because they got a university out here in Washington D.C. called Gallaudet University that serves people just um solely for people that are deaf and hard of hearing.
Right.
So it's interesting. Like I said, a lot of people talk about this civil rights thing, but I think disabled people are still being left behind when it comes to this whole civil rights thing and trying to get the seat at the table. Like I said, I don't need a seat. Allow me to pull my own seat up to the table.
Right.
I'm already in a wheelchair.
Right. I mean, like I said, I agree with you on the fact that if you're going to have a forum on equality and diversity, then but once you open that up, you have to have a little bit of everything because, like you said, the word diversity. You can't just have a group of people talking about one or two groups of people being left out. Where you're talking about diversity, you have to have all groups so that all groups can figure out, okay, if we slicing this pie up, then that I want my slice.
Well, I
If
guess
we talking,
disabled. I guess people could talk about us now and then. We doing this podcast, and people say, "Well, y'all disabled. Y'all ain't got no point of view for a person that's non-disabled."
I mean, but that's the thing. When you look at it from an intellectual point, we do. You
What do you
understand
mean
what
by
I'm
that?
saying? Because you look at it like this. All right, I got older siblings, right?
Yeah,
Then my older siblings, they're able bodied. My younger siblings, they're able bodied. But in between me and let's say my older brother, my younger cousins, they come to talk to me because I went through a lot growing up being in a wheelchair, so at a certain age, they want to sit down and talk to me. Even though they can run, jump, skip, hop, and all that other things, they rather sit down and talk to me than talk to my older sister. Or, I've had my older cousin, he talks to me every week about issues. So it's like when you go through what we went through, we like masters of struggle.
yeah,
Nobody ever struggled. Like I wouldn't compare my struggle to yours because I know some of yours. You know some of mine. I wouldn't say mine was worse than yours because I seen your struggle. You get what I'm saying?
yeah,
But when you go through it from the stages of which we went, you got to remember we went through life's development with disabilities. Who's more informative than us about how to deal with certain things?
true.
So when you talk back to the topic, when you talk about diversity and you're bringing up an issue, how do you leave anybody out?
Yeah,
You can't leave anybody out.
especially speaking on diversity, like I think it's interesting that when they make these bathrooms or they have these jobs, like, hey, we got a adaptive technology job for a person. We looking for a person for adaptive technology or just different um issues that deal with disabled people. I'm like, why won't they be the first one that they put up a put up a thing for a red flag and say, hey, disabled people are encouraged to apply because they know more about these issues that they're going on because they live them every day. Whereas you do see, hey, bilingual people are encouraged to apply, but rarely do you
Exactly.
see disabled people are encouraged to apply. Those are the ones that you need to bring into the conversation.
Right. I mean, but like you said, it's us doing this podcast, and it's people asking that question. Like, until one thing I noticed about my life, there's a lot of people, me being the age I am now, when I was younger, a lot of people didn't that I was around didn't understand. But unfortunately, as people get older, their bodies start to deteriorate, or they end up in some accident. They end up with some type of apparatus like crutches or a wheelchair, and now they understand. They understand why I was doing what I was doing as a child. So one thing I remember is when I was younger, I had this one person who was always questioning why I would take so long to get dressed. And then he ended up in an accident and ended up paraplegic. And now he understands.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So until when we like when you talk about public buildings not being wheelchair accessible, that's until the owner becomes disabled and he can't get into his own restaurant.
yeah,
You get what I'm saying? Then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Or that's until, like you said earlier in this topic, people with disabilities like myself, I own a business, and we start opening businesses, and it's like, okay, my business is going to automatically be wheelchair accessible because I can't get in if it's not. So we have to understand, like, going back to the topic again, either we get a seat at the table, we pull our own chair up at the table, or we do, like you said in the beginning, with the Republican ideology, I might need to build my own table.
well, that's going back to the whole. That's what I wanted to say. Like I said, I don't mind being out here building my own table, and clearly you
Exactly.
don't mind building your own table too.
Oh,
But
not at all.
but like I said earlier, we know me and you aren't the norm. So I'm
Right.
doing this for the pod. I'm doing a podcast for, and I don't want to seclude myself from everybody else, but I'm doing it for all the other rooms that don't have a voice where they could speak or speak up, or they're shy or can't or nonverbal or whatever. So that's what I'm here for, to just speak
Exactly.
for them. Because like I said, I've been out here in the South for like, I think that'd be actually I think it was 3 months on the 30th,
Right.
and I've had, like I said, 4 or 5 opportunities, and actually I was working at I got hired at Job Corps, and they called me. It was like, hey, what kind of accommodations do you need? I'm like, and it was like basic accommodations, like, hey, the walls aren't wide enough for your wheelchair to get in there, so we need to
Right.
move you to this on that. So I knew I wasn't taking the job, but I still made them fix things for the next person that was coming behind me, because like I said, this is 2021. It should those that shouldn't be an issue about getting inside the building and outside the building. So
Well,
after they fixed all the issues, then I told them, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking the position. Like I said, it wasn't because of it wasn't it was more for the other people coming behind me to make things different and better for them.
I'm a quote. I can't remember what book it was I read, so I'm sorry I can't quote the author, but I'm stating that this is not my quote. But I can't remember what book it was. I read a lot. Um, I was a one way for a person to get really rich without working too hard is to find a problem and solve the problem. So a little advice to you and anybody that listens to this show. If this is a problem, you can make a lot of money by coming up with the solution. So if you down south, like you right now, you down south, and I know that experience firsthand because I go down south periodically, and so a lot of places down south are not built like metropolitan city areas. And if there's a problem that you can find a solution for, there's a lot of money and solutions for problems. I'm just throw that out there.
And I just got
And
one advice for people. Transportation is a big help for people with disabilities. When we talk about this, equity, getting that being on the equal level playing field, and diversity and inclusion, transportation is good. One of the things that y'all can help out with, and all that. I think the only thing you got to do with that is get a what is it, Department of Transportation license or whatever, and
yeah,
get a tag to put on your car and make sure. I guess accessible. I'm not sure if it's that hard or what, but I guess I'm down here, and in a county that I'm in, they only have two parent transit drivers down here for the whole county. So I turned like I said, I got hired. I got offered the other day to come work for the school system. I told them thanks but no thanks because I'm gonna just work this job from home instead of going into a school building and have to depend on this transportation system that isn't that is that I well first of all I thought Metro SS was bad. Metro SS is great to compared to down here where I'm at. So like he said, we give y'all ideas where y'all can help y'all community and help people with disabilities too to get rich real quick.
real quick. I mean, I'm throwing it out there from even a person with a disability, even myself, if I had the capital and the time, I would consider because like I said, I go down south myself periodically. That was one of the things I did notice when I went. I go to a county in North Carolina called Duplin County, and in Duplin County they have what they call Duplin County Transportation, but that is really set up for people to go in 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 the county, even though the counties in that area are not too far away from each other. You know, like PG and DC is pretty much like across the street from each other.
Yeah,
It's kind of set up like that. So if you're not in Duplin County transportation is not really going to help you. And then there's nothing else until you get to like Raleigh, which is 2-3 hours away. And I was thinking when I was down there, like if I had the money and the manpower, or something like Metro Access would make a mint down here. But I didn't have. I at the time I actually had the money, but I didn't have the manpower to get it done. So I would definitely suggest anybody that's looking for a business to get into or something to invest in, look for a problem like this and find a solution because people are being forced to have to move back down south because of a lot of the rent increases. But people like us, we're gonna need you. Definitely gonna need you to get around because I don't see nobody moving around in the south without some type of transportation. You know,
yeah,
so I mean that was one of the things that I remember having that conversation with you when you told me you was moving down there. And I was kind of, red flag with that because of my experiences going into North Carolina, which is a great place to live. I mean, it's a wonderful place to live. But for a person like myself with a disability, it's just those little hiccups that make the day go longer. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's like, I got to deal with this. That's crazy. I actually had a short story where we went to a Chinese restaurant and the restaurant itself was wheelchair accessible, but I had to go to the bathroom, and the lady looked at me and said, "Well, go to the bathroom somewhere else." And I asked for my money back because I was like, "Cool, if it's like that, I don't want to spend my money with you." I was like, that little. I don't even think A person who was born and raised in the country could fit in that bathroom, let alone me in my wheelchair. It wasn't even the fact that the bathroom wasn't wheelchair accessible. It wasn't person accessible. I'm not trying to be politically incorrect, but this was a very small bathroom for very small people. And it's like, we in the South. Ain't that many small people in the South, except for little babies, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and said, well, go to the bathroom somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I eat somewhere else too. So that's just me, But back to the topic, I mean, I'm all for building my own table. I think in so many diverse ways, because we come not only with the disabled card, we come with several other cards that I'm not going to mention because that's not the topic. But people if you're not going to, like you said, invite me to the party and ask me to dance, then hey, I guess it's time for me. It is 2021. Just, we have to remember that. Do we build our own table and invite them? Or do we build our own table and then exclude them the same way they exclude us? That's the question.
Nah, I'm not about excluding people just because they exclude me. Now you're a bit
Oh,
now you're a businessman, and you probably know more of this about me. And I've been correcting on this topic before about, hey, let's do a black owned business on sell to our own people. And my boy had to correct me like, hey, let's watch out with that. It's okay to sell to your own people, but it's also okay to get the money from the white people, from the Korean people, from the Hispanic people, and everybody else. Because if you want to a successful business that brings in a return of your investment, you want to sell to everybody. So
yeah, well, I'm going to correct you and your boy on that one. It's I say this when I teach, because I have a small circle of people that I teach my business knowledge to. So I'll give a little jewel here. There's only two types of business. Either you're supplying a good or you're supplying a service. Either you're selling a good or you're supplying a service, right?
mm,
Now, if I'm selling a good, it doesn't mean that I utilize that good. You understand what I'm saying?
okay,
Like, I could sell wedding dresses. Wedding dresses cost up to $20,000 a unit. I could open a business and sell wedding dresses, but I will never wear one. You
okay,
understand what I'm saying? So, of course, your partner, your boy is right in that aspect, because if I'm selling wedding dresses, I'm not just gonna sell wedding dresses to black women. It's still gonna be a black-owned business, and I'm only selling, and I'm gonna sell wedding dresses to whoever got $20,000. That's who gets the dress. But
okay,
your boy is wrong in the aspect of, if I'm supplying a service, which is the other aspect of business, I can say this one is for black people. Let's say if I'm supplying a service like we're doing this podcast right now, right? If I wanted to open a school, I can open an all boys school. I'm excluding women now.
okay.
You understand what I'm saying? So I don't have to serve all white women and all Asian women, because this is an all black, all boys school. So let's say I open up a school. I'm gonna quote. Let's use Umar. Umar's opening up a school. It's called what is it called? The Hurt of Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington. That
Yeah.
school, he is making it solely for black children, but it's a service. It's a business.
Okay.
So I can say that this school is for black children, and I can exclude any other race, and I can do fine in my business. There's places that is solely for, let's say, for instance, you ever been in a mall and feel like there's no store in that mall for you,
Yeah.
they're excluding you.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They're supplying a service. You can come in and go shopping, but we're not going to put a store in here that sells anything that you like.
I mean, like up there, Friendship Heights area,
Exactly.
where you gotta have money.
Exactly. Now your middle class income don't fly right here. We don't want you here. This is for upper echelon.
You
So
need a
we're
couple
excluding.
$100 to go in Neiman's and Marcus or whatever.
Right. So there is some aspects where you can't, like if I open up a restaurant, I can open up a black owned restaurant, but I'm selling barbecue chicken and turkey wings with gravy, but I'm not going to tell the white man he can't come get no barbecue chicken with turkey wings and gravy. He can come get it too if his money right. But
So
if
you're
I'm
not
selling,
doing white only pies?
oh no, ain't no white only pies because the money green. You did
Okay.
because the money green. But if I'm selling Cadillacs, you understand what I'm saying? If I'm
Okay.
selling Cadillacs, you gotta have $50,000 better. You
Okay.
don't have $50,000 better. I don't care what race you is. You gotta fall back. You can't come in here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I got a nightclub, you think about a bouncer at a nightclub. Most bouncers at a nightclub don't let ugly women in.
Okay.
Why? Because it messes up the ambiance of the club.
Okay.
Can't let you in. I have to exclude you because you mess up the business. So your boy was right in some aspect, but he's wrong in others because there are certain industries where I have to draw a line here. I can't let you in because it's going to cost me more. Can't
So
let you.
so if you're saying that, then I guess they saying the same thing about us too. It costs y'all too much, right? It costs us too much, but it costs them. It costs the business too much to put a ramp on a facility. It costs the business too much to have an accessible bathroom. So you're pretty much doing what they doing, right?
Not if I'm selling tangible. Not if I'm selling the good. You miss what I'm saying. If I'm at a restaurant and I can't use your bathroom, then I can't eat here. So you lose money. So it's a benefit for you to fix your bathroom so that I can eat here. You
Okay.
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I
But
think it goes back to the whole topic, having an inclusive community and be able to allow disabled people to get out in the public and let people see that hey, that their money works just as the next person money works.
that is ground zero of one of the domestic issues that we have with disabled people. We need more disabled people to get out in the community and say, hey, I know you got that wheelchair ramp, but I'm on crutches. Because a lot of people don't realize that wheelchair ramp is not good for people with crutches.
Okay.
They struggle a lot. I've seen people with crutches some ramps. There was a ramp when I can't remember exactly where it was, but there was a guy who he was on crutches, and I was going up the ramp, and it was raining, and then the gravel for the ramp was a little slick for like people with two stepping. And I actually had to let him hold on to my chair. I was in a power chair, so he could walk up the ramp. And I understood that because the ground was wet, he couldn't walk up the ramp. Although there was a wheelchair accessible ramp, there was no steps, and he wasn't going to be able to go in that incline. Like he could walk on flat surface, but that incline on them crutches, he was going to fall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he had to hold on to my chair so he could go up that incline. Because them crutches wasn't made for that incline with that slippery slope like that. And so just being out in society and seeing that. Because a lot of people think we all empowered here. That was another thing I had to deal with going from DC and traveling all over the different places in the country. A lot of people look at you and be like, well, why you ain't got a power chair? Because I don't need one. You know?
Yeah.
What I need is for you to have a what they call it,
Yeah.
ADA
Accessible.
approved ramp.
Yeah.
You don't have an ADA approved ramp. That slope is a little too steep. And you're looking at me like, well, why I don't have a power chair? It doesn't matter. Your slope is a little too steep. Yeah. But your elevator's not working. If I had a power chair, your elevator's not working. Who's gonna carry me and my power chair up the steps? You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
another issue. So I remember going to the doctor with my wife, and the elevator wasn't working. She had to go to the doctor by herself up the steps, and I had to sit downstairs and wait. And I remember the firefighter came in there. One of the firefighters came in there because the old lady called the firefighter, and they took her up the steps. And they came down and it was like, "You ready to go?" They was gonna take me up the steps. And I looked at him. I said, "Well, unless you're gonna stay down here when it's time for me to come back down, I'll just stay here." And he bust out laughing because it was like he thought about that with the old lady, like who's gonna bring her back down.
Yeah.
So he was ready to take me up the step. But when I said, unless you're gonna sit right here till it's time for me to go, I'll stay right here. And he just laughed because he was like, I didn't, I've thought about that, but hey, I was just trying to help. I was like, cool, but so you get those people who will help and try to ease that situation, but shouldn't have to, shouldn't have
Yeah.
to. But we go back again. When you talk about diversity, everybody should be included. But if you're going to tell people, well, build your own, like if you're going to make people feel that they have to build their own table, then I'm all for exclusion if I have to build my own.
Okay.
Because if I have to build it, then mine is for me and my people.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you shared yours and then I took what I benefited from yours and built another one, then I can share with you. But if you put me in a situation where I have to build my own and then mine becomes more beneficial than yours, you can't come over here. I don't think that's, as I'm gonna give you a little advice, I don't think that's safe to allow somebody who wouldn't let you sit at their table to come over to your table when you get yours built up. I don't know.
Okay.
That's just me. But
So to wrap the show up, what's one last thing that you would say to HR professionals or business owners when it comes to this topic of inclusion, equity, and diversity?
um, no, for business owners, know your customer base because you may be losing a lot of money by trying to by not opening doors for people. You may be losing out a lot of, and I'm pretty much sure everybody who gets into business to make money. So know your customer base, and you may be losing out a lot of money. For HR people, I'm not really an HR person, so I'll just shoot one shot in the dark and say human resources is for everybody. I mean, it's HR stands for human resources, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot exclude anybody when you're talking about human resources. You put them two words together, that's an umbrella term. So I'm just shooting a shot in the dark. I'm not a human resources expert. You have to do not exclude anybody because everybody's opinion can help you in the future. You bring in a child's opinion can help you in the future. You think, and real quick before we go, just think about the products that people make and they do surveys. If I'm making a product for a child, I don't want to know what a bunch of adults think. You know what I'm saying? I want to
Yeah.
know what children think. So it's for everybody. So do not exclude anybody, whether it's black people, disabled people, women, white people, gay people. Bring everybody to the table because everybody's opinion matters. And that's all I have to say.
And I think last input on that, I think for HR and owners of businesses that try to bring somebody into your circle that has a disability, and as far as work, and after hours, try to bring somebody into your network that has a disability. I mean, hang out with them, join a Facebook group, um, find somebody on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever. It's pretty much a lot of disabled people out here in the world, and they aren't they aren't scared to talk. Well, many aren't scared to talk to you about what kind of changes that need to be done, or how things could be better for disabled community, or like I said, just allow them to give an input or feedback into what's going on in this culture that we are in today, where hey, like I said, either we pull up our own feet to the table, or we create our own table by ourselves and go from there. So that's pretty much it for this conversation. Thank you for tuning in to the Disabled Guy. We'll talk to you next time.
All right.